What is going on? And welcome to the Saturday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Weird. Oh, yesterday was the trade deadline, and then they had 4 games starting at 9 p.m. Eastern. No one in the major sports in the continental North America sucks at scheduling worse than the NHL. Anyway.
I mean, you hope just to jump in real quick. I know you usually take a second to introduce me, but I'm going to jump in real quick. I mentioned this on Twitter today. Ottawa's last 10 games, including tonight. Last 10 games, not including tonight. Anyway, Ottawa's last 10 games, 8 of them were either the front or the back end of a back-to-back. 8 out of 10 games were back-to-backs over the course of like 2.5 weeks or something like that. That is, I've never seen that before. I mean, maybe it's happened and I just haven't noticed it. I don't remember anything close to like that happening. Like sometimes you'll have a back-to-back on a Monday and Tuesday, and then you'll be off until the weekend and you have one Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday. But not 4 of them in a row over a 2-week span. That is absolutely garbage scheduling. I have no idea how that happened. I would be mad if I was the Sens. I mean, they're not in the playoff race anyway, but imagine if they were. Like, that's just brutal.
Yeah, that does really suck. But trade deadline was yesterday. Massive surprise at the Horn. Tomas Hertl going to Vegas. That team sucks. That's all I'm going to say about that. They just go for it. They have traded every single – you mentioned it to me yesterday. They've traded every single one of their first-round picks except for Brendan Brisson because his dad is the NHL super agent, which is, pretty funny. But.
Yeah, and I'm not going to get into like the injured reserve shenanigans and all that'll probably happen over the years. But one of their writers made a pretty good point. Like this team went to the Cup final their very first season after expansion, and it was a legitimately good team. Like Marchessault and Carlson and Smith and all those guys kind of reached their peaks, reached their ceilings all at the same time. And the GM just kind of realized, like, our cup window is open right now. And, the cup window is probably going to be shut in 2 or 3 years or something. But while that's open, it's kind of like make hay while you can, right? Worry about the rebuild 3 or 4 years from now and worry about building a cup contender while you can, while you actually are a cup contender. Like, you have to applaud that. And, it's going to be painful, in 2028 or 2029 or whatever. Until then, they're a cup contender every season, and that's pretty exciting for the NHL and for the fans of that franchise.
Yeah, and you know who won't be there in 2028? The GM now, probably. So,
I mean, I kind of wonder about that. I know we have 8 games to get to. We should probably get to them at some point, but I saw another writer, Sarah Sivian, mentioned something really interesting, that she's talked to front office executives, and they said there are always moves that they want to make, but are really aggressive moves that would probably get them fired if they didn't work out. So they go with the safer moves often. I wonder if the owner just didn't tell them, be as aggressive as you want, and I will back you up as long as we win hockey games. And they're winning hockey games, so why would they not do that?
Yeah, and you see these GMs make these safe moves, and they're absolutely idiotic.
Like, at a certain point, like the 10th defenseman on your roster doesn't matter. Keep your 4th or 5th round pick. Like, when you're nibbling at the edges, like I am a believer in not having weak links. And like, if you think your number 6 defenseman isn't very good, maybe you go get a number 7 that could replace him or something like that. But if you're worrying about like 4 guys getting injured on your blue line and what your blue line looks like after that, you're screwed anyway. Don't worry about it. Try to make a difference where you can.
Yeah. Nothing like truly awful yesterday. Not like when the Leafs gave up a 1st and 2 4ths for Nick Foligno.
Yeah. That. I mean, to the Tanner Jeannot trade. I didn't think the Tanner Jeannot trade was like as bad when he went to Tampa a couple of years ago. I think I just overvalued Tanner Jeannot's impact. Like, he's been hurt a lot, so maybe that's part of it. But that was wild too.
Yeah, just want to get my Leaf shots in while I can. Should get into the slate.
Yeah,
I could talk about the trades all day long, but we won't. Just wanted to say thank you guys again for the support with the affiliate link signups, the likes, the shares, the whatever, the good banter in the chat, everything, man. You guys rock and gals. We're here for you. We're here because of you. I mean, we're here for us too, but you get this free stuff because you've been supporting us, and we thank you for that. We should get into this slate. Toronto Maple Leafs. Here we go. 3.7 total. Heading into Montreal, the Canadiens have a 2.8. Leafs absolutely cooking at the trade deadline, acquiring Connor Dewar, baby, and two pretty poopers defensemen. What can you actually, you know what? The Leafs bottom six is so bad that Dewar's going to help. He's actually a pretty good defensive forward. So
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, he is a guy that is an upgrade on what they have on their roster. It's just, I think that speaks more to what the roster that they have than how good Connor Dewar is.
Yeah, true. Now we have new Toronto lines because Mitch Marner is out. So they are going Matthews, Nylander, Bertuzzi, and then Tavares, Domi, and Yarncroc as their top six. We do not have a top stacks run with that yet. Now, and it's kind of important because this is a very good spot for Toronto, but Matthews, Marner, Nyes is 20,700. Matthews, Nylander, Bertuzzi coming in almost 23,000, or actually 23,000. It's going to be the most expensive line in the night. We were talking if it was going to be fully correlated. You said they just took Bertuzzi off the power play. They might put him back on. They might not. Could be Domi. We don't know. It could be a fully correlated line. Might not. But as it's put together, Matthews and Nylander, it's kind of weird, right? Because Matthews and Marner have very good numbers on both ends of the ice together. Matthews and Nylander, good offensive numbers, but not nearly as good defensively. I don't know if Bertuzzi's really going to help that. So, it's probably going to be similar to how we talked about Pittsburgh 1 when it was Crosby, Gensel, and Rust. Good offensively, but probably trading chances. So that's kind of important for the Montreal side, which we'll get to in a minute. But I do like Toronto 1 here. It is going to be the most expensive line on the night. But it's an excellent power play spot. I crap on the Leafs any chance I can get. The two best players on the team are playing together in Matthews and Nylander. Matthews is having an incredible season. I'm in on Toronto 1 if you want to spend up. I'm not saying clear path to get that line in at 23,000. I'm saying if you want to play them, you play them, and then you go find value to fit in with them. Tavares, Domi, Yarncroc doesn't strike me as a good line on either end of the ice. So I'm kind of out there. It kind of interests me in Montreal too. I kind of like Montreal, if we're being honest here. I know that the Leafs have a 3.7 total, which is the second highest on the night, tied with Vegas and lower than Ottawa, which we'll get to next, which is an absolute circus just to say. But Montreal 1 coming in at 5%, seeing that Matthews Nylander line. I'm perfectly fine with that. 17-8. There's a lot of lines in the 17K range that I actually like tonight, so I don't know if I'm going to prioritize them 1 to 3. But Newhook, Armia, Roy, right? 9,500. I don't think you need to full stack there. But going into Tavares, Domi, Yarncroc, Newhook, Armia, Newhook, Roy, I think two of those guys are perfectly fine especially if you're looking to power play stack Tampa or doing something along those lines. Yes, the Leafs did scratch Benoit. I forgot who. Oh, they're putting Joel Edmondson on the third pair, Edmondson. So, but yeah, I'm interested in Montreal 2 as a 2-man. I don't think you need a full stack if you're looking to do super expensive stuff. But I'm in on Toronto 1 and Montreal top 6.
Yeah, I'll start on the Toronto side. We don't know what the top power play is going to look like. It's a reasonable assumption that Bertuzzi just slides in, but a few things about that is like Bertuzzi and Marner aren't the same types of players at all. That's why when they took John Tavares off, they put Bertuzzi in his spot, is because Bertuzzi plays, more of that net front type of spot, net front / bumper or whatever. That's not really what Marner does. That's why I kind of wonder if it's not Max Domi that's going to take Marner's spot. Usually in situations like this, you look for guys that have the same handedness. Marner's a right-handed shot. The Leafs don't really have that many right-handed shots. For guys that aren't already on the power play, you're looking at Kelly Yarncroc and Ryan Reeves. So there isn't a whole lot to go from by handedness. I think it's going to be Domi, just because Domi is of anything that he is, like, he is a good playmaker. He could kind of fill that role in the short term for Marner, but it's just kind of guessing on our part. You mentioned the defensive numbers for Matthews and Nylander. Like, you're bang on there. Matthews and Nylander together this season, 3.1 expected goals for, 2.7 against, 3.8 actual goals for, 2.9 against. They're coming out ahead by the goal scoring, which is, why they've played at least a reasonable amount of time together. But yes, they do trade chances. So, like, there's no matchup on the Toronto side that I'm particularly worried about from a defensive perspective, especially if you're going to put David Kampf as the 3 seed.
I mean, this team rules.
This is such a bad decision. It's like, oh my God.
Trade Engvall to trade for Kampf, to re-sign Kampf, to re-sign Reeves.
It's like that meme of the dominoes or whatever. It's like the smallest dominoes trading Pierre Engvall, and then like 16 months later, it's just the absolute most gong show bottom 6 you'll see. All that is to say, there's like Toronto 1 is not going to be a good, like, they might be good defensively tonight. In the long haul, I wouldn't imagine that they're going to be a good defensive line. Toronto 2, Domi and Tavares don't have a huge sample together, but in their small 50-minute sample, 83 shot attempts per 60 minutes, 3.3 expected goals. That line is not going to be good defensively either. And of course, David Kampf is 3C. So you and I have talked about how you try to avoid the Matthews-Marner matchup because they have been pretty good defensively. That is not the case here tonight. There's no matchups to worry about from the Montreal perspective. I do suspect the top line for Toronto is going to be just fine offensively. They're not going to carry much ownership because in the top stacks run that we did have, the top line was Matthews, Marner, Nyes, 20,700, 16.7% top 2 stack, ownership around 8%, so about half that. So where they're going to go up to 23K, I imagine that ownership is going to be even lower, like 3, 4, 5%. Let's say. So it's a really good leverage spot for Toronto. They took Bertuzzi off the power play because they have been kind of struggling on the power play over the last week or two. Other than that, it has generally been a good power play this year. Montreal's penalty kill, we talk about it all the time, has really struggled. Montreal 3.9 minor penalties taken per game over the last 8 weeks. That is one of the most penalized teams on the slate here tonight. I think it's second behind Vancouver, actually. Second most penalized team on the slate here tonight behind Vancouver. So I do like Toronto 1. I just don't wonder if Toronto 2 doesn't have 2 guys on the top power play as well. Like, that's just the only thing I'm thinking. But yeah, on the Toronto side, I like Toronto. Montreal side is very interesting. There's not a ton of ownership coming in on Montreal 1 here. About 5% ownership at 17,800 on DraftKings. That's good leverage for them. They typically all play over 20 minutes. Losing Marner is taking one of the, or maybe the best penalty killing forward that Toronto has out of the lineup. That is a big deal. Toronto's penalty kill had been improving, but I don't think that's going to keep going here tonight with Marner out. I'm going to be honest, including the prices, I think I kind of agree with you that I would rather play Montreal 1 over Toronto 1 here, but they are both certainly in play tonight. Newhook, Armia, Roy, I kind of agree with you. A 2-man out of that, like a Newhook, Armia, I think something like that is just fine. But, at the risk of sounding homerish, I like Montreal 1 the best out of all the lines that we have here in this game.
Well, On top of that, right, they're 17-8 at 5%. There's a line that we're going to talk about right now that's 17-9 coming in with 4x the ownership. And we should talk about it because this game is I've used the phrase worst game of the season often, but this might actually take the cake. Ottawa Senators.
Only until we get a couple games down further down the slate.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Ottawa Senators with a 3.8 total heading into San Jose. The Sharks have a 2.8 total. I was so happy because what I do on these bigger slates is I'll log into the NHL app and I'll just scroll right to the 10:30 p.m. Eastern games and be like, who are we going to have to fade against the Sharks tonight? And I didn't see it. Then I got to the 7 o'clock games. I'm like, why is there a 7 p.m. game in San Jose? And why is it the Senators? And they have the highest total on the night at 3.8. Kachuk, Pinto, Batherson, 17-9, 20.3% top two stack, 22.9% ownership. Stützle, Giroux, Matty Joseph, 14K, 10% top two stack, 20.8% ownership. Michael Granlund, Favorite and Zetterlund, Thomas Bordelot, 12K, 4.6% projected top two stack, 15.1% projected ownership. William Eklund, Philip Zadina, Luke Cunnin, 9,400, 1.6% top two stack, 9.7% ownership. Basically, what I'm getting at is just kill me. Like, okay, 3.8 total for Ottawa. If this was last year, I would be all in. The Sens won me so much money last year. The Sens are cowards this year. Like, I don't know what they're doing. They're just so bad. Now, in single entry, I am in a bit of a conundrum because Brady Kachuk, Pinto, Batherson is a nice line. Don't get me wrong. 17-9. I even like Stützle and Joseph at 14K. You can leave Joseph off. It's just 20-something% ownership where we've seen Ottawa lay absolute eggs in these spots this season. More than one time. There is a large...
Yeah, I'll remind everybody, they just lost to an Anaheim team a few days ago and Anaheim, I think, was missing their entire top 6 forwards.
So missing their top 9. Isaac Lundestrom was their top line center.
Yeah.
Fake Claude Giroux was in the top 6, and they lost 2-1. That being said, like, Ottawa's in a smash spot, and if you like them, you play them. You play your guys, right? I'm just more inclined to power play stack, I think. Just to try to get a little bit different to lower that cumulative ownership. I think you go, Pinto, Kachuk, Stützle, Pinto, Kachuk, Giroux. Just 5-man stack with Chychrun if you want to. Do what you need to do to get different. If I was going to play a full line, it would be Ottawa 1.
Can I, just to kind of cut you off here?
Did I mess up the power play units?
The top unit is Kachuk, Stützle, Kubalik with Chychrun and Jake Sanderson.
Never mind. Retract. Yeah,
there's one guy on each of the top 3 lines on the top power play unit. Or at least there was in their last game. Artem Zub was running the second power play unit. I love the last 6 weeks of the season.
Right. That's just awful. If those are the power play units, that's atrocious, and it makes me lead me to believe in my one lineup, I think I would fade them. Now, if you're playing 20, you're playing 150. It's kind of a case where coming in at the field is not the best option, but I don't think it's the worst. I think you either come in over or under. It would be Ottawa 1 for me. If on the Shark side, like Granlund, Zetterlund, Bordelot kind of interests me at 12K, just not at 4x the ownership of their top 2 stack. Now, maybe a way to get different is to just game stack this game if you think it's just going to be an absolute slugfest, because I highly doubt you're going to see many game stacks of this shit show. So like you go like Ottawa 1 or Ottawa 2, Sharks 1, chalk on chalk is sometimes contrarian, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So you put two chalk lines in the same game together, it probably ends up being a little contrarian. If, again, you like your guys, play your guys. Don't fade because of ownership. I'm just saying in single entry, I don't know if I can get there at that ownership. But like, look, these two teams are atrocious, and there's going to be goals.
Yeah. One thing we should mention is watch for San Jose lines. The lines you read out were the lines that they started with last game, but they did move Thomas Bordeleau down in the third period and then William Eklund up to the top line. And Alex Barabanov is also held out of that game because they thought they were going to trade him, and then Barabanov just never got traded. And they canceled the practice yesterday because their whole team was so depressed after Thomas Hertl got traded. So as I was just looking for lines, I haven't seen anything yet from the Sharks. So we're going to
so depressed after Hertl got traded.
Well, the other thing is like with this being a 7 p.m. Eastern start, there's probably not going to be a morning skate because it'd be a 4:00 start Pacific time, right?
Yeah, we'd have to morning skate at like 7 a.m.
Right. So I don't think we're going to get Sharks lines until warm up. At least it's the first game of the slate. Pinto and Tkachuk have really good offensive numbers together. It's something that I wrote about in the picks article, which is up on Stokastic.com in the NHL section. Free to read every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. With Pinto next to him, 44.8 shots per 60, 4.3 expected goals per 60, 4.4 actual goals per 60 at 5-on-5 for the Sens. They've been really, really good offensively together. I know that they moved Drake Batherson up and down the roster. I think it wasn't Grieg who got moved up. Was it Giroux got moved up in a recent game, and then Grieg took his spot in the second line, something like that, and they moved Batherson down. I'm not entirely sure Batherson stays there. I'm not entirely sure the power play. I'm not entirely sure that the Sens are entirely sure that they know what they're doing is one of the points that I want to make. But I really do like Ottawa 1 going up against that San Jose top line. Like there's no matchup concerns really, but the San Jose top line, 3.6 expected goals against per 60. What I will mention is I think the way I would approach this game would be game stacking it, right? Like this is a 6.5 total. There are a couple other games that do have 6.5 totals, but these are two teams that just absolutely cannot defend to save their lives. Haven't seen an official confirmation on the goalie yet. It might be Magnus Krona again for San Jose. He's been brutal to say the least. So this could be, like I don't want to say it'll be 7-5 game, but it could be like a 6-3 game, a 6-4 game, a 5-4 game, something like that. I don't mind game stacking this. And if you do game stack, I don't think you have to go strictly by even strength lines. Like I would be fine doing like a Tkachuk, Stützle, Giroux or something like that, right? You get 2 out of 3 guys on the top power play unit. Giroux usually plays at least 19, if not 20 minutes every single game. On the San Jose side, everybody on the top line is on the top power play unit, so you can just go that way. Like I think that's how I would approach this game. It probably would be game stacking. If I were to play just one side, it would be Ottawa because I think, at least theoretically, San Jose is the worst defensive team. Whether that's actually the same true in practice, I guess we'll find out here tonight. If I were to play anything, just one line, it would be that Tkachuk, Pinto, Batherson line. I think I'd be more inclined to kind of stack across the lines and go like I said, Tkachuk, Stützle, Giroux, Tkachuk, Pinto, Giroux, something like that. But I think a game stack is what I like best in this one.
Yeah, what I like about this game is nothing, and hopefully they cancel it because there's a power outage in California or something. After a while. No, that's just cruel. That's cruel. Philadelphia Flyers with a 2.9 total heading into Tampa. The Lightning have a 3.5. The fourth line Sean Couturier experiment has ended, mercifully. Not the best spot to move him back up, though, going into the teeth of Point, Hagel, and Kucherov. But the Flyers lines are Forrester, Couturier, Konechny, Farabee, Lawton, Tippett, Cates, Paling, Hathaway. And then, Delorier, Frost, and either Atkinson or Guryanov on the fourth line. Torts is going to hate Guryanov.
Yeah, so, I don't know. I don't know if that guy plays 5 games for the Flyers.
Yeah, there's no shot. Anyway, Tampa also traded for Anthony Duclair. I was kind of hoping he would go into their top 6. He is not. It is Kucherov, Point, Hagel, Stamkos, Cirelli, Mitchell, Chaffee, and then Duclair, Paul, Sheary. The Michael Eyssimont disrespect is just palpable. You have your favorite Tampa combination together. They will be going into Couturier. I don't think it particularly matters too much. You know what? This is a pretty good Couturier line. It's not like
whenever Couturier and Konechny are together, that's when it kind of worries me. When they're split apart, I'm not as concerned, but when they're together, that's when I'm like, do I really want that?
I was just like trying to inhale some copium because it kind of takes me out on Tampa 1. It kind of takes me out on Philly 1. I don't particularly love Scott Lawton as the 2C, but like Cirelli and Stamkos, we've talked about ad nauseum, suck together. I don't know what it is, like, because on their own, they're 2 very good players. Just together, they just are bad. They just don't have the chemistry. I don't know why Mitchell Chaffee's there. Like, I don't know if he's just a guy. I don't know if they see something in him. I don't know. Like, if anything, it would be Philly 2 for me out of this game. I think this is a game where I'll just be targeting an MME if I was playing 20 to 150.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn here because this is a 6.5 total, right? Like, Vegas is definitely expecting goals, and it's not like Philadelphia's had a couple pretty low goals against games recently. Sam Ersson certainly threw it in our face the other night. He only gave up 1 in that win against Florida. But they got blown out by Pittsburgh. They got blown out by Washington. They got blown out by New Jersey. Like, those are all in their recent 10 games, giving up 5-6 goals against. Tampa Bay's top line, 3.4 expected goals per 60, 4.2 actual goals per 60. Going up against the reason I said I don't like going up against Konechny and Couturier is because Konechny and Couturier with Forrester, 1.7 expected goals against in 215 minutes together this year. Like, that was a line that was together a lot at the start of the season. 1.7 actual goals against per 60. Like, they're just not giving anything up at 5-on-5. So they'd have to do a lot on the power play. And again, Philly's missing, with their trades and injuries and all that, is missing a few PK regulars, but getting Travis Konechny back certainly helps. I do have interest in Tampa 1. The problem is like, they're kind of in a league of their own. Like, it's them and Toronto both up around 23K, and then you have to go down to 21K for the Rangers, and then below that, and then you get below 20K for the rest of your stacks. So you kind of have to decide, do I want to stack either Tampa Bay or Toronto, or like a couple mid-price-ish range stacks? Like, that's kind of the approach that you have to take here tonight. I'm perfectly fine with playing Tampa 1 here. Like, Tampa does have a 3.5 total. That is a big total on the slate. I think it's 4th on the slate, but that's because the other 3 teams are in pretty lopsided matchups. It's a 3.5 total against a fellow playoff team. Like, it's not nothing. And that Tampa Bay top line has been really, really good. Like, I do like Tampa 1 here, but it's the only line that I would play. Like, Cirelli and Stamkos, John Cooper's a really smart coach, and I know they have a smart front office. I don't know why they keep going back to this, because it's been years of them not being able to play well together. This year alone, Cirelli and Stamkos, 150 minutes without Brandon Hagel as the winger, 1.7 expected goals for, 2.6 against, 1.1 actual goals. This a Steven Stamkos line scoring 1.1 goals per 60 minutes. Why are you keeping these guys together for 150 minutes and counting now? It's pretty wild. I guess they're fine because Cirelli and Stamkos are both on the top power play unit, but I agree with you. I'd rather play the Philly side. So I think Tampa 1 is my favorite line in this game. I think I would probably rather play Philly 2 as kind of like a filler type stack, Farabee, Lawton, and Tippett. I don't have a lot of confidence they're going to stay together all game. Like, that's kind of the problem. But it is Tampa 1 I do like best here. I will say Philly 1, that Couturier, Konechny, Forster line, great defensively, not bad offensively, like above average, but not elite. And so then, you're kind of relying on Vasilevsky to suck, and Vasilevsky has sucked for a few weeks now, so maybe that keeps going. But I think it's Tampa 1, Philly 2 for me out of this.
Yeah. There's a lot of bad games in a row. Like, this game sucks, the next game sucks, everything sucks. If you want to sign up for NHL Premium, click the link in the chat to get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry, player and ownership projections, top sacks tools, line combinations. And you know what you can use these tools for? To try to analyze the Chicago-Washington game coming up next. No, but for real, you get into the Discord. There's a lot of sharp people in there. Cliffy and Iro's in there. Jake's in there. You can figure out who you're stacking by asking Daily Deposit Frostback who he's playing in net. It's just the print factor in there. But yeah, no, just get in there. It's a lot of fun. We have good times in there. And thank you for the support. Let's talk about this idiotic game coming up. From a real-life hockey perspective, this game is actually worse than San Jose and Ottawa. Chicago Blackhawks with a 2.5 total heading into Washington. The Capitals have a 3.5 total. I don't understand what Chicago is doing, right? Bedard and Donato have good numbers together. Bedard, Kurashev, and Foligno might have the worst top-line numbers in the history of the NHL. It's not even hyperbole. And it's like a 250-minute sample. 1.6 expected goals for per 60, 3.5 expected goals against. Oh, sweet. They're fully correlated. Like, Washington, decent penalty kill. Like, Donato at least can create offense. Like, I like Kurashev, Donato, Bernard at that combination. So, like, there's nothing I really like on Chicago outside of maybe like a Bedard one-off or Bedard Kurashev. Like, 1.64 expected goals per 60, and I still want to one-off Bedard. That's how bad Washington is. You know what I mean? Also, Bedard's kind of like in that Panarin basket. He kind of skews the expected goals numbers a little bit, but still. What to do on Washington is a bit more tricky because they have a 3.5 total, which is just absolutely bananas. Ovechkin, LaPerriere, Protas as the top line at 13.5, coming in exactly at their top 2 stack percentage at 5% projected. Wilson, Pacioretty, McMichael at 8.9% projected ownership, 3.6 top stack. I think they both those lines are going to avoid Dickinson, Blackwell, Joey Anderson for the most part. If anything, I think that McMichael line might see a little bit. But, like, if you're going to give me lower ownership on an Ovechkin line, I think that's fine. Like, unsurprisingly, McMichael and Wilson don't have great numbers together. But I would imagine McMichael and Pacioretty in a larger sample will. I don't mind that line. It's just like 9% for that line is a bit wonky. You know what I mean? I think I'd rather just go play Ovechkin, Protas, that line going into Bedard, giving up 3.5 expected goals against per 60 minutes in a massive sample. So Washington won for me. Now, we were talking about this ownership before the game or before the show. I would not be shocked to see Ovechkin in double digits ownership. The other two guys are going to be lower owned. So I think if you are going to play like, okay, one-offing Ovechkin has been fine since like 1992. But if you want lower ownership, I think you at least bring Protas along for the ride. So Washington 1 is the line that I like in this game.
Yeah, I'll start on the Washington side. I wrote up Connor McMichael in the picks article for a few reasons. I mean, one, he's 3,600 in a matchup where he's at home with a 3.5 total. Like, that's obviously one of them. The other is he's up at 17 minutes, 17 seconds per game since February 13th. I highlighted that because on February 13th, he played his lowest TOI game, his lowest ice time game of the season. And since then, he's been at 17-17, which is like 2 minutes more than his season average. And he got meaningful power play time in the team's last game. Like they're doing that thing again where Ovechkin plays both halves and they're basically splitting the power play units. So even though McMichael and Ovechkin aren't on the same even strength line and technically aren't on the top power play unit, they're both on the second. So there is a little bit of correlation there. You and I talked about how McMichael is a player that, really thrives off the rush. Chicago is one of the worst defensive teams in the NHL. Like it's them and San Jose basically flip-flop depending on who had the worst game the night before. So I think the McMichael-Pacioretty duo is perfectly fine, especially for their price, right? Like Pacioretty's only 4,600, McMichael's only 3,600. Like he can stack them for a little over 8K as a two-man. You want to throw Wilson in because he's not expensive. I think that's fine. We want to play Washington 1. Go ahead and play Washington 1. I'm going to be honest. I think this is a situation where I'd rather just one off Ovechkin than full stack the line. The line that I'm interested in from the Washington side is the third line. Like, whatever else you want to say about this Washington team, Dylan Strom's had a good season for the Caps. And I think why you're seeing him down on the third line is because with Nick Dowd still not back, like he skated, I think he was at morning skate today, but they're saying he's still not back. Like they traded Kuznetsov, Backstrom's out, Dowd is out, right? So that's why they're basically relying on Connor McMichael to play 17, 18 minutes a game. That's why Hendrix Lapierre is a top line center right now. I think they're putting Strome down there because they literally don't have anybody else to play at center that could possibly carry a line. And Strome and Sonny Milano, God, I love Sonny Milano. That guy just has great playmaking numbers season after season, and it's just so awesome to see. Strome and Sonny Milano, 3.1 expected goals per 60 so far this season in 110 minutes together, getting probably bottom 6 matchups against this Chicago team. And I believe that those expected goals numbers could stay strong, especially in this matchup, but just in general, Milano and Strome are 1-2 on this team in scoring chance assists, assisting on teammate scoring chances per 60 minutes so far this season at 5-on-5, as tracked by a website called All Three Zones. So you have the two guys that could probably play pitch and catch best together, getting bottom 6 matchups against this Chicago team. I think a Strome Milano 2-man, Strome Miroshnichenko 2-man, I think that's kind of what I like best on the Washington side. Just add Ovechkin with them. It doesn't even matter that they don't have even strength correlation because Ovechkin will get his minutes. He's on with the empty net, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's Washington 3 I like best on that side. I don't mind Chicago 1 here. And the reason I don't mind Chicago 1 is because Washington can't defend. They cannot. They have nobody left that can defend. Nobody on defense, nobody up front. As good as Strome and Milano are offensively, it's not going to be a good defensive line, and the top 2 lines ahead of them are going to be even worse. Yes, that Chicago top line can't create. This Washington can't defend, and that Chicago top line is perfectly correlated on the power play. We talked about before how the power play, Nick Foligno is one of those guys. He's helping in the net front position on the power play, kind of like Corey Perry did before he got kicked off the team. And there's not a lot of ownership here. 2.8% ownership for a fully correlated line going up against the Washington Capitals. This Washington Capitals roster, I don't mind Chicago 1. So I think it's Chicago 1, Washington 3. Just add Ovechkin if you're playing the Caps.
Yeah. Sonny Milano had a great season for the Ducks. They went to Calgary for a PTO. They didn't sign him. Calgary, man. Making mistakes since 1991. St. Louis Blues with a 2.5 total. Heading into Madison Square Garden, the Rangers have a 3.4 total. I went to go look for Blues lines because Buchnevich did take a few shifts in the third period with Thomas and Kyrou.
Oh, it wasn't just a few shifts. It was the entire second and third period.
Yeah. I looked at the game preview. I couldn't find anything. It's kind of important because that line is very good when they're together. When they're apart, they're very bad. So if Kyrou, Thomas, Buchnevich are together, and it sucks because for some reason the Rangers game is at like a 7:30 start, which is weird because the Rangers never get flexed to 7:30 except for tonight. It's kind of important because I think they might be back together. I don't know. If they are, you can get that line at super low ownership. That's the one thing you will get them at. They'll probably see Kreider, Zibanejad, Jack Roslovic. Now, eventually, I think that's going to turn into Wenberg, Kakko, and Cooley. I don't think it's going to be tonight. I'm not sure how Roslovic is going to fit in there defensively. Probably not as good as Kakko. The thing is, like, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think just look at the numbers for the top line with Blake Wheeler there, and I think that's a pretty good approximation of what it'll look like with Jack Roslovic.
Yeah, I don't know because Roslovic, I think, was the only forward on the Blue Jackets with an expected goal share over 50%, which is like quite the accomplishment for that Blue Jackets team. And I don't think it's particularly his fault that Jenner and Gaudreau suck defensively. I mean, he's surely not helping, but I don't think he's truly the one to blame. I don't think the numbers with Roslovic there will be as bad as Blake Wheeler. They'll be somewhere in between the Kakko and Wheeler, closer to Wheeler. But yeah, I think you're going to eventually see Wenberg, Kakko, Cooley take top line matchups because they've been trying to get Zibanejad going all season. He just hasn't gotten going. And Wenberg, Kakko, and Cooley, I think, are going to be a pretty good defensive line. Now you can say Wenberg, whatever, didn't have good defensive numbers for Seattle, but Kakko and Cooley with Brzezinski had good defensive numbers. So with Wenberg, I think it's possible. I don't think it's going to happen tonight. But anyway, if Kyrou, Thomas, Buchnevich are together, I would be interested in that. You're going to get them at low ownership. The question is what to do with the Rangers. Zibanejad, Kreider, Roslovic is interesting. I think Roslovic could be the guy to get Zibanejad going. But again, I prefer Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere at 21-1. They're coming in with less ownership. Obviously, they're more expensive. Get two guys on the top power play. They just had great numbers all year. I think Kreider, Zibanejad, Roslovic are fine, but it would be New York Rangers 2 for me, especially if they're running into the Shen Neighbors matchup more often than not. That's just brutal. I mean, brutally bad for St. Louis because they suck defensively. So I'm interested in Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere. I think Kreider, Zibanejad, Roslovic are fine. It's just I kind of want to see how they mesh together because it did take Zibanejad and Kreider a bit to get synced in with Tarasenko.
Yeah, I just kind of think like just generally speaking, I think it's fine to just kind of plug and play Blake Wheeler's numbers with Jack Roslovic's numbers, and that's what they'll do because I think at this stage of their careers, like Roslovic is the better player. Like Roslovic is very good in transition. Like he's good at making sure that they can gain the zone with control. He's a very good playmaker. I wrote about it in the picks article today when I wrote up Jack because I had to write up Jack Roslovic. Of course, I had to. 1.47 assists per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Led the Blue Jackets over the last 2 seasons in 92nd percentile in the league. He was something like 24th out of 340 forwards in the sample, like right next to Sidney Crosby. Okay, that's kind of why I was surprised people were pushing back against this trade. Like he's not a good defensive player. He's a very, very good playmaker, and that's exactly exactly what Zibanejad and Kreider needed. I just don't know if they're going to be good long term. It's one thing to be good with them for 10 games. It's another thing to do that in the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. But I think Rangers 1 is perfectly fine here. Rangers 2 is what I wrote up in the picks article because 1, like they get the ice time. 2, we know that they've been good. I mentioned in the article, it's been over 600 minutes together, 3.4 goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5, 3.8 goals when looking at just since the All-Star break. Lafreniere has 40 shots in 13 games since the All-Star break, over 3 shots per game. Like, he is very involved. He's not just some third wheel that you can leave off. Rangers 2, obviously because of their price, not coming in with a whole bunch of ownership, 5.6%. I really like that Panarin line here tonight. I'm fine with either of the Rangers top lines, depending on what you want to build. I think I'd feel safer playing that Panarin line. On the Blues side, I agree if Buchnevich, Kyrou, and Thomas are aligned that I would play them. That it starts 30 minutes after the first 4 games is one weird for a Saturday because you never see games start at the bottom of the hour on a Saturday unless it's a 10:30 Eastern start. The other is there's 16,000. The Thomas, Kyrou, Buchnevich are 16,900 on DraftKings. It's kind of important that they're at that price because we'll talk about Los Angeles later, but Los Angeles 2 is 16,700. So if for some reason St. Louis's top line isn't together, there is a direct swap you can make there. Vancouver 2 is also 16,300. So there are 2 swaps in the later games that you can make. If that St. Louis top line isn't together in warmups, I suspect that they will be. The thing is like, one of the reasons why you play the Blues is because they are perfectly correlated on the power play. And one of the reasons why you would stack against the Rangers is because the penalty kill just hadn't been very good, but the penalty kill has been getting better. And it's basically been in lockstep with Shesterkin's improvement, over the last month. Like if the Rangers don't give up anything on the PK, I don't feel too great about that Blues line having to score 3 goals here tonight. So I think it's Rangers 1, then St. Louis 1, then or Rangers 2, sorry, the Panarin line, then St. Louis 1, then Rangers 1. But the Panarin line is way above everybody else. It's the line that grades the best, easily grades the best for me, even when including price. So it's Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere that I really want to play in this game. But I think you're right about the St. Louis top line. You'll probably be able to get them at a very low combination if you're willing to stack them. And if they're not together in warmups, there are a couple swaps you can make from later games.
Yeah, and just a quick note on the Rangers PK. I wouldn't say Trouba is one of their best penalty killers, but he does penalty kill. So you're going to have someone step up and take that role. And Zach Jones is coming into the lineup. It's not going to be him, I hope, which is why they went out and got Chad Rudewell. Like, that guy's just a solid 6th defenseman. He's not playing, but like maybe the Rangers PK does take a tick down tonight. But, if Igor's on his game, it doesn't really matter. But we won't know until then. And Clayton says St. John's has a basketball game in the Garden today. That's probably why. It's at 7:30. Give him an extra half an hour. The ice is going to suck. But the one thing is, the ice in the Garden always sucks. Winnipeg Jets with a 2.6 total heading into Vancouver. The Canucks have a 3 total. I don't know if Tyler Toffoli is going to be playing. This is a back-to-back for Winnipeg. I haven't heard anything. He's out. Cliffy says he's not playing.
Yeah. Toffoli and Velarde are both out.
Yeah. Okay. So the line combinations are going to be the same as they were yesterday, I would imagine, which were Connor, Scheifele, Nemestikov, Ehlers, Monahan, Iafallo. Just send Cole Perfetti to the press box at this point.
He's going to be there. So as soon as Toffoli and Velarde are back, Perfetti is going to be the healthy scratch.
Someone needs to go save him and trade for him.
Alex Holtz for Cole Perfetti, straight up.
No, we don't want Devils to have nice things, but that does make sense. There's not any ownership in this game at all. These are just 2 good defensive teams, and Vancouver's at home, so that Scheifele, Connor, Nemestikov line is going to see a gaggle load of Miller, Besser, and Hughes. Not interested. You want to go to Ehlers, Monahan, Iafallo. I don't know why he's there. Like Cole Perfidi on that line makes it a good line. Iafallo is just a guy at this point. And sure, when he scores, you can yell at me in Discord saying, a guy scored. But like, I don't want to stack him in DFS. Elias Lindholm or Winnipeg 3 might actually be my favorite line going into the Elias Lindholm, Connor Garland, Vasily Podkolzin line. You know what I mean? Like that line just gets their 16, 17 minutes and they're good. And they're 10-3 and they're coming with absolutely no ownership and you can fit them in with expensive power play stuff. I'm not saying run out and go play Winnipeg 3, but in terms of the Winnipeg lines, that's probably my favorite line of the night. On the Vancouver side, don't have a ton of interest. I just don't like these lines. This is a brutal matchup. It's Hellebuck and net tonight. I have not much interest. If you happen to get to some of the Patterson line or the Miller line in your crunches, you don't have to scream and break your computer. I think you can leave them. But in, like 1 to 3, I am not prioritizing them at all.
Yeah, I don't have any interest in Winnipeg. Just, generally speaking, but for tonight's slate, Nemestikov on the top line, they're actually not bad, but the impact has been more defensive than offensive with Nemestikov there. 2.4 expected goals against, 2.3 actual goals against. It's actually been a pretty good defensive line, Scheifele, Connor, and Nemestikov. And that's the line that Pettersson, Besser, and McCabe are going to go into. I feel like that's just going to be a sludge fest. Like not a lot created either way. So no interest in the Scheifele line, no interest in the Miller line. Monahan and Ehlers have been creating. And the thing is like with Velarde and Toffoli both not playing, Iafallo's probably going to stay on the top power play unit. Like they didn't get a power play last night, so it's not like confirmed, but Ehlers, Monahan, Iafallo, 2 out of those 3 guys are probably going to be on the top power play unit, right? And they're going to see the Pettersson line, which has typically not been as good defensively. There's not a lot of ownership coming in on Winnipeg too. 1%, 1.5% top 2 stack. Like I think they're fine as a filler stack, but I like they're not a priority for me by any means. The only line that I'm really kind of interested in, honestly, is Pettersson, Suter, Hoglander. I don't know what's going on with Pius Suter. Like he's having a really, really good season for Vancouver. And it's not like he was a bad player and this has come out of nowhere or anything like that. He's had one of the best defensive impacts of any player, any forward in the league this season. And when you're in Elias Pettersson line and you're not getting hemmed in your own zone and you're giving Elias Pettersson a lot more time to create offensively with Nils Hoglander, like that seems like a good deal. Pettersson, Suter, Hoglander's not coming in with that much ownership, 1.4%. They're only 14,300. You only get Pettersson on the top power play unit, but honestly, at this point, who cares? Like Winnipeg doesn't take a lot of penalties. The Vancouver power play has been generally struggling. I kind of like Pettersson, Suter, Hoglander as a more expensive filler type stack. It's really the only line I have interest in this game. I don't have a lot of interest in stacking either side, period, though.
Yeah, you know why Pius Suter is having a better season? Because he's playing with actual hockey players instead of in the bottom 6 of Detroit with, like, Justin Abdelkader. You know what I mean?
That's a fair point.
Like, Pius Suter, they got Pius Suter to be a top 6 center, and then they went and got Kopp and Comfer. Like, I'd rather have Pius Suter than Kopp at this point, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those Detroit. But before we do, just want to say thank you guys again for your support with the affiliate link signups, the likes, the shares, the banters, everything. And I have my MMA quick picks video up on my Twitter. UFC 299 tonight. Great card. I have them up weekly. Got some pretty good feedback. Thank you guys for that. Appreciate the support. Detroit Red Wings with a 2.8 total heading into Vegas. The Golden Knights have a 3.7 total. Detroit really jumbled their lines last night. We won't get confirmation on anything. I'm not sure it completely matters in this matchup. Like, if you want to play Kane and DeBrincat, like, that's fine. If you're interested in Detroit, you can hopefully put Kane and DeBrincat together. Like Vegas's penalty kill hadn't been good, but you go out and you get Hannafin, you have him with Pietrangelo. Like they have good penalty killers now. It just doesn't seem like this is a great spot to stack Detroit. I'm in on Vegas here. Eichel, Marchessault, Barbashev, 17-7, 11.3% ownership. Like that's another line you can throw in the Montreal 1, Ottawa 1 bucket. They're all next to each other. Like obviously Montreal has the least ownership. Then you got Vegas. Then you have Vegas even has half the ownership of Ottawa 1 right now. I'd much rather play Vegas 1 here than Ottawa 1 in my single entry at that ownership. So I do like Vegas 1. Vegas 2 I think is fine. Carlson, Stevenson, Mantha. Maybe Stevenson on the wing can get going a little bit. That could be me inhaling the copium, but I don't know. But this is a Vegas top 6 game for me.
Yeah, I have no interest in Detroit at all. This is one of those situations where, like, if I check DK tomorrow morning and I got buried by a Detroit stack, I'll just say, well, that sucks, and then just go about my day. Like, I no Dylan Larkin takes the only good center they have out of that lineup. Like, all due respect to JT Compher, he's like a defensive-minded third-line center on a good team. He's not a 1 seed to play with Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat. Like, I'm sorry. He got all that ice time in Colorado last year because they didn't have anybody else. It was basically like this Detroit team where they had one good center and then a bunch of guys they were hoping could play center. I have no interest in Detroit. It's the Vegas side that I have interest in. I wrote up Jack Eichel in the picks article. He's like been shooting a lot this season. 11 shots in the 2 games since he returned from injury. He has 15 shot bonuses on DraftKings in 44 games this season, and he's 8th in the league in shots per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. His ice time is going to go down once they start getting a bit healthier, but I imagine he's going to keep playing around 20 minutes a game. That top line, 2.9 expected goals for, 2.7 actual goals for per 60 minutes. You get 2 out of 3 guys on the top power play unit. This is like, it's Vegas 1 for me in this game. If you want to drop down to Vegas 2, like Carlson and Stevenson actually do have decent offensive numbers together in a small sample. And those second and third lines from Detroit, like Dylan Larkin and Lucas Raymond together, Andrew Kopp and Michael Rasmussen are like, none of that is going to be good defensively. So I have no problem. Even if you want to go down to Vegas 3, like Pavel Dorofeyev's back playing on the third line with Nicholas Roy, perfectly fine with that too. Perfectly fine with Vegas 2. It's Vegas 1 because I want to get the 2 best players on this team, like 2 best offensive players on this team. And what is a really good, like Detroit with or without Larkin is a bad 5-on-5 team. And Vegas does have a 3.7 total, and they're not a team that typically scores a lot on the power play, especially without Mark Stone. So a lot of it will be at 5-on-5. Vegas 1 has been a really good 5-on-5 line, a good 5-on-5 line, at least offensively. Vegas 1, Vegas 2, Vegas 3, in that order for me in this game. Nothing from Detroit.
It's so crazy that, like, based off their roster, like this team has to suck, right? They're leading the wild card in the Eastern Conference right now, for now. It's just it's crazy that they're playing meaningful hockey this late in the season. Looking forward to see Mark Stone and Alec Martinez conveniently timed return. I would be shocked to see Stone in the first round of the playoffs, honestly. I mean, maybe, but like lacerated spleen sounds serious. And Hurdle's going to be back in the regular season, so I mean, what you can say whatever you want about Vegas. The people who do their CBA work, brilliant. Any team can do it. Vegas has perfected it.
Listen, the Toronto Maple Leafs have like 30 contracts on Robidoux Island. I don't want to hear any of this from anyone.
Yeah, where are the Leafs fans at with Klingberg? Klingberg, honestly, the worst signing of the season last year. Like, he is terrible. Dallas Stars, the 2.9 total. Heading into Los Angeles, the Kings have a 3 total. Sad to see that the Kings almost traded for Linus Ullmark and it didn't get there yesterday. That had to be a massive trade package.
Apparently, that was all bullshit.
Was it?
Like, there have been multiple reports that have come out since saying that Allmark was almost traded, but it wasn't Los Angeles that was in on it, or at least close.
The rug has been pulled over our eyes again. Anyway, back to our boys, Dallas 3. Stankoven had a 0-0-0 last game. I mean, it's fine. I'm not crying about it. You're crying. But there's still only 14-2, 1.1% projected ownership. Jamie Benn had a shot bonus on a goal. Wyatt Johnston had a shot bonus. They played 17 minutes apiece. Ben is on the top power play unit. The Kings still have goalie issues. Turcotte's still on the top line. You know what I mean? Like,
can I jump in there?
Please.
There was a note from Zach Dooley. He covers the Kings. He's saying it seems like there's a chance Kempe's back tonight.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Because Kempe is the straw that stirs that drink on that top line.
Well, I think that's I feel a little bit short, but the thing that sucks is that it's a 10:30 Eastern start, and I don't think we're going to get confirmation on that until warm-ups, and there's no other games. So, like, you're kind of boned.
Yeah. I mean, this is a back-to-back on the road for Dallas. And for some reason, they started Andre last night and lost. Did they lose?
Yeah. No, they won like 6-1 or 6-2 or something.
Yeah. But like it was, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. Here we are. Yeah, I don't know what I'm saying. But whatever, it's Wedgwood and net. If somehow we get Kempe news before 10:30, and he's in, I would have interest in LA1. As it stands, LA2, 16-7, 9.6% projected ownership, positive leverage. There truly isn't a matchup that I worry about on Dallas. So I'm in on LA2. If we happen to get Kempe news, that would be nice. I'm interested in Dallas 3 again, 14,200. Probably going to see that Pierre-Luc Dubois line. That line is whatever to me. Their goalies have been mediocre at best recently. So LA2, Dallas 3. If we get Kempe news, I would be interested in that top line.
Yeah, I wrote up LA2 in the picks article. The main reason I wrote them up is because without Kempe out, like they have been getting more ice time. 18:30 per game at least for every guy on that line over the last 2 weeks, where none of those guys were over 18 minutes over the first 4 months of the season or whatever. So they were getting a lot more ice time. Those guys have combined for 12 of Los Angeles' previous 21 goals, like goals scored, like not, assisting on goals or whatever. Like they had scored 12 of the previous 21 goals for Los Angeles, and, very good numbers since the All-Star break, 3.3 expected goals per 60 at 5-on-5, Los Angeles splitting units, but even the guys on the second unit still getting like 35 to 40% of the ice time. So getting something. I do like Los Angeles too. One thing I will note is that with if the top line is Kopitar, Kempe, Byfield, that's $17K. You can stack that, and if it's not that line, you can drop down to Kings 2 at warm-up, because Kings 2 is 16.7, I think. So it's $300 cheaper. You could go from Kempe, Kopitar, Byfield to Los Angeles 2. And, just play that line instead. Like, I like Los Angeles too, just in general. But if you want to get potentially get a super low on Kempe, you can go with the old LA1. And then if he's not in the lineup, just drop down to LA2. So I think that's an approach you can take here. I agree with you on Dallas 3. Johnston, Ben Stankoven, 4.9 expected goals per 60, 3.7 actual goals per 60. Wyatt Johnston has 40 shots in his last 10 games. Safe to say that Stankoven's really helped everybody on that line. They're not going to get the Kopitar matchup, which, as bad as they've been offensively, they are still really, really good defensively with or without Kempe. So I do like Dallas 3 as a fillery type stack. They're a little bit more expensive than a filler. They're 14,200, but they've been too good to ignore. I know Stankoven got blanked last night or whatever, but the other two guys had decent nights. So Johnston, Ben, Stanko, I think is very much in play here, but it's Kings 2 that I like best. Old Kings 1 with Kempe. If you want to play it, you'll get a super low on Kempe. And if he's not in the lineup, just swap down to Kings 2.
Yeah. I don't think any team has drafted better than the Stars in the last 5 years. It's crazy how good they've drafted.
It's the reason why they're not in the position basically that Chicago's kind of in, where Kane and Taves and Seabrook and Keith and all those guys eventually started breaking down. Then they had no prospects to replace them besides Alex DeBrincat. And that's not the case with Dallas. They have a half dozen elite prospects and elite young players in the league. It's crazy.
Yeah, and they also didn't have to go out and trade a draft pick for Evgeny Kuznetsov at the trade deadline. What are we doing? Carolina has a smart front office. They have to see something that we don't see.
Well, he's still a really good playmaker. It's just he's not good at anything else. And maybe they hope that they can get him back good at other things. They tried the same thing with Max Domi, and we know how that went.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen here. In the top of the board, we have Carlson, Hughes, Hedman, Shea Theodore, Miro Heiskanen, Mike Matheson, Josh Morrissey. That is the 6K range. Don't really love it. I think the two guys I would want to play in that range are Theodore and Heiskanen. The other guys like Carlson, fine. Hughes, fine. Like all those guys are fine. They just don't I'm not going to force them into my lineup. Adam Fox is going to play heavy minutes tonight without Trouba. That is a fact. Who else are you liking?
Yeah, I have Shea Theodore. It's just such a good matchup against a really bad Detroit team. Mike Matheson, it's just the minutes, right? Like he's probably going to play 24, 25 minutes. Montreal does have a good total. So him or Riley in that game. But for me, it goes Theodore, then Matheson, then Riley. Mid-price range, I wrote up Seth Jones. It's just with Connor Bedard back, he's been shooting a lot more. He's just been shooting quite a bit in general. And Jones has been playing 26 minutes a game on average of late. So a lot of heavy ice time in one of the very few times where Chicago is going to be in a decent road matchup for the rest of the season. So don't mind him. Jacob Chikrin, I mean, he's going to be owned through the roof, but I got to mention him. I wrote up Matt Roy in the picks article with Mikey Anderson still out. He's been playing a lot more minutes. So Adam Fox is probably going to have to play more minutes with Jacob Trouba out. But I do like Matt Roy from Los Angeles, Vladislav Gavrikov from Los Angeles, Artem Zub running the second power play unit from Ottawa. I mean, what the heck? May as well. It's the San Jose Sharks. Caden Gooley is seeing his price drop from Montreal. His projection is very strong for his price on DraftKings here tonight at 3,900. One cheap guy I will mention from the Rangers, Braden Schneider. He's the only other right-handed shot on the blue line besides Adam Fox that is healthy. So if they want a right-handed defenseman on the ice, it's either got to be Fox or it's got to be Schneider. So I imagine he gets a little bit more ice time here tonight.
Oh yeah, this is a absolute tryout for Braden Schneider. Trouba out. Zach Jones, min price as well. He'll probably only play 13, 14 minutes. I'd rather play Schneider at 2,600. For sure. Let's talk a little bit about goalies here. Oh, boy. There's just I think if I'm spending up, it's going to be Aiden Hill at 8,100 or Thatcher Demko at 7,900. And then if I'm looking for some cheap guys, it's probably going to be either Montembeault or Mrazek. There isn't much in the mid-range that really interests me other than Hellebuck.
Yeah, I wrote up Thatcher Demko. It's mainly what I mentioned. We've talked about it on the show, but without Gabriel Velarde, the Winnipeg top power play unit, it's something like 30% fewer shots, 33% fewer shots, 30% fewer goals without Velarde. It's a big drop off. If they're not scoring on the power play, I think the Canucks can shut them down at 5-on-5. So I do like Demko. I mean, Scott Wedgwood, man, not a great goalie, but the Kings still struggling to score at 5-on-5. Peter Mrazek, obviously for cheap in Washington. Both the goalies in that Chicago-Washington game, I know Lindgren is it Lindgren starting or is it Kemper? I forgot to double check that.
Lindgren is starting at 8,500.
Yeah, like, I mean, you can play him because there's a decent chance of a shutout. Everybody has a decent chance of shutting out Chicago, but I think Mrazek is a really nice, cheap goalie. And Igor, hopefully he doesn't sucks here tonight. Don't mind Igor Shesterkin at his price, but it is like Demko. It's basically down to Demko or Mrazek for me, depending on how I build my lineup.
Yeah, I didn't want to be a homer and say Igor. I've been talking about the Rangers a lot today, and I apologize to absolutely no one for that. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
Wrote him up in the picks article. I mean, this is going to get thrown back in my face when they lose here tonight, but I do think Vegas just absolutely trounces Detroit here tonight. I'm going with Jack Eichel.
Surprised you didn't go with the only little guy on the team in March. So it is kind of funny when he's on the ice with all the other towers on there.
Yeah.
I am going Yurjov Slavkovsky. I butchered his first name.
Yeah, it's Uri, but I mean, I appreciate the sentiment.
No, listen, like, yeah, we have a little rivalry, original six, but anytime we can see the Leafs in pain because of it, we push that aside. Absolutely. I don't know when we're going to be back. Monday or Tuesday? Probably Tuesday.
Yeah, I think it's Tuesday. I think there's only 3 or 4 games on Monday. So probably
we'll be back on Tuesday. We'll see you then. If you want to sign up using the affiliate link, we do truly appreciate it. Get in that Discord. Clayton will tell you the rules, and then we will ask Frostback for his goalies, and then I'll give you my top 3 to 5 stacks. We'll make money, and we'll be happy tomorrow. But we'll see you on Tuesday, everybody. Good luck.
Good luck tonight, everyone.